Good evening and welcome to the Lincoln County Courthouse. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. This meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission will begin after a few remarks. This meeting is being streamed live, and when adjourned and posted, it will be available anytime at lincolncountysd.gov. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff findings. The applicant will then be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the County Planning Commission. I will then open the floor to public comment, first in persons in support of the application, and then persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. Lastly, decisions on change of zones will be scheduled for additional public hearing during an upcoming Board of Commissioners meeting. The decisions on conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 days. Thank you for your cooperation. All right, we do have a quorum present tonight. The Planning Commission will now approve the meeting minutes. Are there any corrections to be made? All right, seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion, Boots.
Boots
Second, Green.
and Green. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, we're good. Planning Commission will then next approve the meeting agenda. Are there any changes to the meeting agenda? Mr. Brown?
No change, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. I'll ask for a motion.
So moved, Green.
Second, Scott.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? All right, that passes. Next item is public input on non-agenda items. So is there anything you'd like to let us know? That'd be great. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and we'll go to our first item, a conditional use permit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Toby Brown, representing County Planning and Zoning Department. This first application for you this evening is a conditional use permit request for an oversized accessory building. Subject property is approximately 7,000 feet to the west of the city of T. As you can see in this picture, we're going to update the, as you're aware that the city of T, the city of Harrisburg, and the city of Sioux Falls and Lincoln County have updated their plating subdivision jurisdiction boundaries. This area will now be within the city of T's subdivision authority. So I just wanted to point that out. It's a little bit different than what the map shows. Subject property is zoned RR rural residential, as is all adjacent properties. Subject property is approximately 1.10 acre parcel. It is currently developed with a single family dwelling. The square footage, the main floor square footage of that single family dwelling is approximately 1,968 square feet. These are some shots that were taken. These pictures will be to the south of where the house is where the proposed area for the accessory building is. So the applicant did submit an application to the department to construct a 1,500 square foot accessory building on the property in the locations that's shown on the site plan. There is an existing accessory building on the property that's 480 square feet, so that's what does push us over the 1,500 square feet. So you are aware that in rural residentially zoned properties, if you want to have a total square footage of accessory building of over 1,500 square feet, it does require a conditional use permit approval by the Planning Commission. So in reviewing the application, staff did look at the surrounding area. This property is within the Homestead Acres subdivision, so this again was a rezoned property. for that development. In discussions with the applicant, is proposing just to utilize this for personal storage or personal usage. Proposed accessory building is slightly larger than the finished main floor square footage by just a few feet, essentially, of that. In total, it'd be about 1,980 square feet that's being proposed for the total accessory building on the property. So when we do look at the surrounding area, there is existing accessory buildings on adjacent properties. There are, within this development, there are previously approved conditional uses permits for oversized accessory buildings. But we do think that this particular area of the property should provide some screening for it because of the house that's directly, or the house, it'll be to the south of where the residential structure is. And again, we did post the property. The applicant did send out letter notification to all surrounding properties. As of this public hearing, staff has received no comments from neighbors or anyone associated with the application. So staff does recommend approval of this. We do feel that this is consistent with the character of the area, and it shouldn't impede any further development of it. Most of the lots are fully developed within this development. Do recommend approval with the 6 conditions that are listed in the staff report. And again, these are 6 standard conditions that we do place or recommend placement on all oversized accessory buildings with it. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you. I'm gladly answer any questions of the board, but the applicant is in attendance this night to answer any questions that you might have for him, so.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'll ask any questions for staff?
I have one, Mr. Chair. So Toby, out in that area, who takes care of the Homestead Acres roads? Is that taken care of by like the HOA out there? Because I assume, I didn't see it as part of the plan, and maybe this will be a question for the applicant, that there will be a driveway to the building?
Correct.
I didn't know if it would come off of the normal driveway from the road past the house or just the closest area on the road next, but who's the road authority there?
So there's a road district out there in that development that takes care of all road jurisdiction. And in discussions with the applicant and even just before this, right before now is, yes, he has visited with the road authority to make sure that they'll allow that additional driveway access to the south of the property.
And it would just be closest from the building to the road then, I assume?
Yeah, direct access. Yep.
Okay, that's what thank you.
Yep.
All right, anybody else, questions for staff?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Toby. All right, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and tell us about your project.
My name's Lenny Wallman. I was just looking to get a little more storage room, just personal use.
Could you state your address for the,
It's 46661 Burma Court, T,
all right,
57064.
thank you. So, just for storage for yourself?
Yes. The kids a little room to play and throw balls around,
Yep.
you know,
Yep. All right, Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, sir. With that, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application come forward. Seeing none, I'll ask anybody in opposition to come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
I'll make the motion approve with the 6 recommendations, Boots. Second, Scott.
All right, we have a proper motion, a second. Any further discussion? No, I gotta say, it's matches all the stuff in that area, and everybody needs more garages. All right, with that, I will do a roll call. Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Otten.
As the Lincoln County Commission representative, I will be abstaining, but I have no conflict of interest.
All right, and Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. That passes. Congratulations. All right, we will go to old business. Is there any old business, Mr. Brown? No. All right, new business. No new business, but you have a report for us.
Thanks, Chair. 2 items under new business tonight. The first one is approval of the Planning Commission calendar for next year. So every year this time, we approve the scheduling or the meetings for next year. So as you can see, it's a little bit different calendar this year. So at the joint jurisdictional meeting last week, the city of Sioux Falls and the planning commission approved changing the meeting date to the same meeting date as the planning commission regularly meets. So as you'll see in the calendar, it'll be the same date, will essentially be the planning commission and the joint planning commission. So if there is an item that's a joint planning commission item, that meeting will start at 6 o'clock, and then the regular meeting will start at 6:30. So as you'll see on the calendar, that's what it is. So that'll be the third Monday of every month, except those Mondays that have a holiday, it flips to the Tuesday. So you can see January and February would be the two that do that. And then the other thing I'd point out too is, I believe it's July 4th, you'll see, it'll say that this is a courthouse holiday, so the courthouse will be closed on July 3rd, but the holiday is actually the 4th, but just wanted to point that one out as well too. So do you need approval of the board to set the calendar for next year's meetings?
All right. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The March meeting, can we reschedule that one so it's not in conflict with all the township meetings?
Okay, yeah, that's just part of the motion, just move that to the Tuesday, then the 17th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally missed that one.
I forget
Yep.
about it too, but if that's okay,
Yep, just part of the motion, just move that March meeting to the 17th, so.
let's do the 17th.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? All right. With that, I will ask for a motion from the staff to approve the 2026 calendar.
I'll move to approve the calendar with one adjustment, that we move the March meeting from Monday the 16th to Tuesday the 17th.
All right, perfect.
Since we just moved it from my anniversary to another day, I will second that motion.
All right, any further
You
discussion?
can't ever be on a township board, can you? Lucky.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Okay, the next item under new business is, previous meeting, we talked about kind of how to proceed with the zoning ordinance amendments. And so talk a little bit about that tonight, and then I do have some suggestions that we can work on for a draft for next month. So first and foremost is not looking at revising the entire zoning ordinance, so we essentially do amendments to the process. Actually, and that's just a method to just kind of keep it simplification, so that we're making sure that we're just, discussing and proposing amendments, that we don't, nothing gets slipped in or nothing gets, it's complicated for staff or the board or for people to understand kind of what the proposal is. And so really starting with would be things that we've talked about. So typically when you do an ordinance amendment, try to fix things, improve things, as opposed to kind of, just throwing everything out and starting over, or doing something that we don't really need to fix, or like we like to say in government, is creating a problem that we didn't have a problem to begin with, kind of a thing. So first thing would be is to take, and the largest zoning district in the county is the A1 agricultural district. And so kind of start with that basis of that one. And the first step is, would really be to start with one of the topics that we typically have, and that's the transfer of eligibilities. I'm trying to pull up an ordinance here once we can take a look at it. And so again, you're familiar with it. In order to transfer building eligibility within the A1 agricultural district, there's really two criteria, and there's a number of criteria throughout that we also have, but those are the two primary ones, is that it has to be contiguous under the same ownership. And so typically, when it comes to the same ownership, you would think that would be a restrictor, but it's really not, because we do have a workaround for that, and that's that there's a quitclaim deed on the property, and it goes through a little bit of paperwork shuffle and that. So really, the proposal that would present to you is that to amend that to take out the same owner requirement. So it would just be a transfer of building eligibility from one parcel to another parcel. And then, I'll pull up that there once. So that's a conditional use, that we would allow it to be, transferred from one parcel to another parcel. So one thought that we talked about is, and I guess I'll start out there, and this is kind of this is a work session, so it's kind of a free-flowing discussion, is generally, again, next month we'll put together a draft of whatever comes out of this discussion. So don't have to get in the weeds in it, but just really kind of take a look to make sure that's something that you guys are supportive of doing with that portion of it. And so again, really, from a staff perspective, it's just an extra step that, and oftentimes, with the quitclaim deed and the quitclaim deed, they don't work through our office to do that. It goes through the Register of Deeds office. So sometimes it's up to the meeting date that we don't even really know if that's completely occurred with it. And then, so this just allows us to engage the process a little bit better with the applicant, the townships, and all that kind of stuff. So instead of saying same ownership there, we would just remove that portion of it. But don't look to really change anything else associated with it. I think it just makes it simplification for it, takes away that step of actually making people transfer property and then retransfer property. Because I should say is that it's a quitclaim deed, but then it's quitclaim deed back to the person. So it's not a long-term effect that occurs with it. So any thoughts on that or any discussion that you want to have on that portion of it?
So to clarify, if I own a section and Todd owns a section next to me, I can just sell it and transfer him the eligibility. Don't have to be owned by the same, but they still have to be touching.
Yep, has to be contiguous, but they don't have to be the same ownership.
Okay.
And that's typically what's occurring is Todd wants the extra eligibility, and so we're having to go through that extra step to get that eligibility to him.
What about, if you remove the same ownership and you remove the contiguousness?
How would we track it then? I mean, so if
The
it's,
same way we are. And the reason I bring it up is because it allows, you and I have talked about this, by doing this, it creates an advantage for the further north you get in this county. It creates an advantage for those people because that's where the development is versus maybe landowners in the southern part of the county that don't have as many opportunities to transfer eligibilities. But if they could transfer them, say from Norway Township to Delapree Township, that would allow, that maybe it would be it would be an interesting discussion to have, I guess.
yeah, I mean, I think, if you recall, I think a couple of years ago, we just had a discussion about this, and we filled the room with people about the discussion of it. Is the concern on taking away the contiguous parcels would probably be the township concern about movement of them in different areas. But as you've pointed out though too, is the neighbors would all of a sudden potentially have some next to them too, so, yeah.
Yeah, I just think it'd be an interesting conversation. And the past conversation we had, it got to be more about maybe removing the transfers. And now this would be a completely different discussion. It would be opening the transfers up more, so it'd be an interesting discussion to have. I guess if we're gonna continue to have the ability to transfer, which I think we are, and I think that was what people basically were pretty adamant about the last time we talked about it. I think the same ownership thing had good intentions, but as you've said, there's an obvious workaround that I don't like, but it's there and there's nothing we can really do about it, and it just creates a lot of hassle for everybody. So that part seems to me to make sense. I think but while we're having that discussion, I think there's a few other things we could have. And I think maybe you're gonna bring that up next.
And, I think the other thing is, even if you take off the same ownership and you leave the contiguous parcels, I think it could still accomplish what you're thinking of from south to north. It just would make sure that there's a more kind of a bumper on it, I guess, is what I would say. Because it would require, each applicant or each parcel would require a transfer then. They wouldn't have to,
You could play leapfrog across
Yeah.
20 parcels, couldn't you?
You could, yeah.
Which makes the process a little harder. I just
Yeah.
wonder, I just think of a person, okay, you own land in Norway Township, you have nobody has any desire to build a house there, but somebody maybe further north has a desire to build a house, can't get housing eligibility. Now it allows that person in Norway Township to play ball too, and they can transfer from there to wherever, and, yeah, I don't know. Probably would create a bigger mess than it's worth, but it would be interesting.
The eligibilities then become a commodity, just like a liquor license.
Seems like the way we've been handling business, although, the further north you get, now we're just doing planned developments versus, so building eligibilities kind of come out of play with those planned developments anyway, the further north you get. So are we just creating a problem from one township to maybe another township further north?
That's where I could see the issue.
Right.
Is that both sides of it, if all of a sudden, a group of people over a period of 20 years move all the eligibilities out of one township and sell them, and they go somewhere else, well, that kind of makes the residential potential, it's more of a generational decision, which probably isn't good.
Yeah, well, we can talk through this, and it could raise property tax if you have 4 housing eligibility on one section, you never plan on using them, but they're also now worth a value, and you're paying more property tax on that value. But, yeah, we can work through that.
Okay.
I'll wait till you go, or you're gonna talk about
Maybe save that for next month,
the
the permitted special.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess I'd be willing to have the conversation. I think if we're gonna be talking about eligibilities, let's talk about, but next month, let's maybe talk about all of them. Cause I wanna throw one more thing on there that maybe it'd be,
We'll throw it out there now. So the one thing is kind of again, remove the same ownership criteria. The other one would be is that if they were just moving one, we'd move it to a permitted special use. So that, typically is what we see is just one, but they do have to wait 2 months to go through that process and the public hearing process, as opposed to just moving that one to a permit special, and then anything above the one that would require a conditional use permit. Kind of streamlining the process, creating a little bit less bureaucracy with it and things like that, so.
All right.
so. Well, one last thing, do we have when a transfer happens, there's no setbacks attached to that, is there, from anything?
No, because they don't show us exactly where they're gonna place them at that time, so.
Would that be a discussion worthy of having?
Yeah, I think we could put that as permit special, it has to be platted and you have to have township approval,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Again, the purpose of making a permit special would be to put standards on it. Like tonight, we approve a conditional use permit, you put conditions on it. But as I mentioned, every accessory building, oversized accessory building, we put the same conditions on it. And so why not make those conditions standard regulations as opposed to arbitrary type decisions? And then that way we can, streamline the process a little bit, so. Okay, so I'll draft it that way and then we can have discussion about it, so. Okay, the second topic, and I've got 4 really to talk about tonight, and really just throwing them out there, and then the intent again is to draft these as amendments next month, to review them, and then if you're okay with them, then the next step would be to bring it to the Board of Commissioners for them to remand it back to us to schedule a public hearing and go through the adoption process, okay? All right, the second item would be solar. Recommending that we add a provision in the agricultural district for solar. And so just some ideas, but the first idea would be is that differentiate between the two. And I know that's something that I've heard you talk about it, and I know we've talked about it. So essentially, and this is just a thrown out here, but we based on 80 acres. So if you were developing a solar project on 80 acres, that would be a permitted special use. And we would put the conditions that we put on the previous application that we had. So screening, making sure that there's full screening on it, making sure that they have a decommissioning plan, making sure that they've had the neighborhood meetings and those different types of things. Anything above 80 acres would require a conditional use permit, which would require the public hearing and go from that. And then also, much like we do with CAFOs, we'd put a cap on it. So if it's 100 megawatts or larger, it wouldn't be allowed in the A1 agricultural district. So it would then have to go to a commercial or industrial district for that. And the threshold of the 100 megawatts would be what the state has for permitting, so we treat it just like CAFOs. So if it requires a state permit, it wouldn't be allowed in the A1 agricultural district, it would have to go to those other zoning districts. And then the decommissioning, on the previous application, staff recommended $100,000 for decommissioning, but we'd recommend a $5,000 per acre decommissioning on the proposal. Okay? Any thoughts or discussion on that?
Instead of the acre requirement, can you make it, should we speak in, what is it, megawatts? I'm not an electric, should we speak in that versus acres?
So we did talk about that, but the problem with megawatts is they can differentiate the megawatts. So they might not need a certain threshold of a land acreage that they can make more megawatts out of the panels.
It's like, just like anything, one manufacturer might have more power, one manufacturer might have less.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so you could have 80 acres of solar panels and they could be widely different how much they pump out. I see.
How they're built and whatnot, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So based on what you're saying, were you saying the minimum is gonna be 80, or is it 80 and below?
Up to 80.
Up to 80?
Up to 80 acres would be a permitted special.
I guess my struggle is, obviously we heard the one and the commission voted with the planning and zoning commission. So permitted special use, they would have never even gone through this process. So all we're saying is the one that we denied as a county, if this regulation was in place, then we wouldn't even have had the conversation.
If they made all the criteria or the standards. So there'd be a setback too, so we'd have to establish a setback.
Yeah. I don't know, some of me struggle just based on the fact that I think, the way that one was written, it was very stringent. There were, there was a lot of obstruction to be able to see it, and there were setbacks, and that one was denied, so I'm not saying I'm not for it, it's just, at what point, all of a sudden, there is no longer the public engagement on the process anymore. It's just a permitted special use, right? So it's, I don't know,
For a certain threshold.
for a certain threshold, right?
Yeah, and look, throwing out numbers, I mean, if you want to make it smaller, we can do that too.
So-
But there's a way to differentiate so that the smaller projects, you would say, have less of an impact than the larger projects would.
So that's a good point. So basically, what you're saying is that, you would draft this would be a good starting point. Then we'd have discussion about it and.
Yep.
And maybe we say not 80 acres, it's 20, whatever, we'll move it around at that point. But that's where the discussion would start.
Yep,
Okay?
Is the foundation for the requirements, right? Like that's
standards. Yeah.
standards, right?
Yep, yep. And, you can, one thing that we've consistently talked about is moving conditional uses to permit special uses, because if they have set standards, shouldn't matter where they are, it should matter the land use part of it, so we just say that's what's acceptable for that. I should say too, is we would still recommend that accessory solar would just be it's permissive use currently. So if it's associated with your house right now, we just building permit that, it's permissive use, okay? So I'll draft it out like that, and we can start the discussion on it and go from there, so. The third thing would be accessory buildings. So I've talked a little bit about, you're very familiar with oversized accessory buildings, but I'll kind of get you into the weeds of what this involves. So currently, in the A1 agricultural zoning district, if I come into the department and I say I'm going to use this building for agricultural purposes, and so it's typically, I'll say what the issue is we don't have a threshold for what that is. Is that 5 acres? Is that 10 acres? Is that 20 acres? And so the first step would be we'd recommend that we need to add a provision for what we consider an agricultural building to be for. And so I'd recommend that you go with what, we're two different departments, but it's, the Department of Equalization, they've established what agriculture is, and that's a 40-acre parcel. And so we would say it's 40-acre, and it would be combined, I guess, so it'd be contiguous acres. So typically you might have a farmstead that's 2.5 acres, but controlling around it, if you total 40 acres, then we would allow an agricultural building on the property. So then when that's determined, then we can address the oversized accessory buildings. And so currently in the county of Wares, we just had one if it's over 1,500 square feet, if it's in a subdivision of more than 4 lots, and if it's zoned rural residential, it does require a conditional use permit for it. And that's regardless of size, that's regardless on size of the parcel, that's regardless of size of the single family dwelling. So what we would propose, and this would align us with our municipalities, which they always talk about when we do a joint jurisdictional one, is that it exceeds or doesn't exceed the main floor. I'd propose that you do, that it wouldn't exceed the habitable space. So that would allow us to add the basement into it as well. And so if it doesn't exceed that, then it would just be a building permit that we would issue for it. Much like now, if you build a 1,500 right now, we would allow it to be a building permit. It's over 1,500 that requires that. So that would just be a building permit. And then, if it's not, it becomes a conditional use permit. And then the other thing we'd recommend is that a subdivision of 4 or more lots is a little confusing for people looking at it, because you got to really do the math to take a look at that. We'd recommend that you limit it to more than 4 lots within a section. So that way we'd be able to know exactly how many is within there. Okay? So those would be the changes we'd make to accessory buildings. I think that would streamline the process. I think it would allow, kind of more set standards for how we do the accessory buildings in the county, have more of a criteria. Every time that we require somebody to do one over 1,500, they always say, well, why is it 1,500? What's the magic there? Well, that's just what the ordinance is. But this would make sense to people where it's like, we want to make sure that if you're exceeding that habitable space, that we make sure that do have to have approval for that. So, okay? Does that kind of make sense, or any questions or comments on that?
So, for example, in my 10 acres, I just have horses in a barn. I still have to come in for a conditional use permit because I want to have over 40 acres.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. I should say another standard that we wouldn't change that exists is you can't have an accessory building on the property unless there's a primary structure on the property. So that wouldn't change. You still have to have a house if you're going to build an accessory building out in the rural area. And the primary reason we do that is that just helps with, it's an unoccupied structure in the rural area is not a good idea for security, for safety and stuff like that. So, okay. Last thing, the fourth thing I talked about is density bonus. So we do get a lot of requests for people to have an additional dwelling on their property for mom, dad, grandparents, kids, and that kind of stuff. Or I shouldn't say stuff, but that type of relationship. We don't really have a provision that allows for that unless you would be able to obtain a building eligibility or transfer building eligibility into the parcel. And so, and this is becoming more prevalent with the cost of housing and the need for additional housing areas. So what we propose is that, and again, to treat everybody the same, would be any existing lot would be allowed additional 1 density of a structure. The requirement would be those that you wouldn't be able to subdivide it or plat it out. And we used to do that many years ago with the ordinance. And so it is kind of a common common request. And so again, this would also address probably some of the housing shortages that we potentially might have, so.
So, yeah, I think you addressed the questions I had. So it would be limited to just one single-family dwelling. You couldn't build an apartment complex or something like that. And then, yeah, how would that be tracked? So that it couldn't be, let's say somebody did that and then 10 years down the road, they want to come subdivide the thing. What would the lever be in place there so that didn't happen?
So it'd be a conditional use, so it'd have to
Okay.
be a public hearing.
Sure.
And then we would put that as a condition that it, under no circumstances, because
Yep.
the challenge we have is up in the, I'd say primarily the northern part of the counties is where we don't have subdivision authority. We don't control it. We wouldn't know it. But that would make it a non-conforming use, so.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay?
Yep.
And would we specify, I know you talked through some different relationships, would we in the ordinance specify the affinity of the relationship, or is it, what, is it gonna be a parent-child relationship, or do we not need to be that granular as far as like if somebody wants to put a second house on their property?
Yeah, I would say as long as it, yeah. Because essentially they can't plat it out, so it doesn't really matter in that
Okay.
part of it, so, yeah.
Yeah, if I want you to come
Hey.
live in my second house, that's.
Absolutely.
But when you go to sell it, then you'd be selling just one property with two houses on it,
Yeah.
because you can't split that up.
Yeah, I think that's the key to the whole thing is that it doesn't get abused and it gets used for the purpose that it was intended.
How do we control that people aren't building then rental properties on their houses? or
They could.
on their-
Suppose
They
they could, yeah.
They could,
Yeah.
Just one though.
yeah. But I mean, eventually it would, you know, mom, dad move away, kids move away, grandparents move away. You know, we don't want to control that part of it, so, yeah. It is a great restriction on the no plat. I mean, that's your
Yeah.
restriction.
Yeah, yeah, because if that pumps the brakes on most people, they don't wanna build another structure right next to where they're living, and then that maybe it kinda becomes a goofy piece of property to sell in a way with two houses on it.
So maybe it's just self-policing anyway.
I kinda think it would, yeah.
In all reality, I think it's an attractive piece of property though, because you'd be surprised what the demand is for doing something like this.
I suppose,
I mean, it's
yeah.
just the cost of housing is just, of land, so if you
Yeah.
think about it, you can provide an opportunity for your kids to come back. Grandparents can share and, taking care of kids and doing different stuff
Yep.
there. There's,
Well, I know two people. I've got a high school friend that did something similar for his parents as in their retirement, and then another buddy of mine had his daughter and her kids moved back, and they kind of did the same thing. But I think they had to do it with eligibilities. This would have made things a lot simpler.
I think it helps someone take over the farm from their parents.
Absolutely.
And whatnot too.
Mm-hmm.
Be more affordable when they're getting started.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
and that's always a tough call. I mean, we get probably once a week, somebody will call and say, hey, I've got 10 acres here and, my kids are trying to find a place but they can't afford that, a lot in Sioux Falls or wherever it might be,
One thing in that, Toby, would there be any requirements on like septic, for example, and things like that? You wouldn't be able to share septic, and they'd have to have their own septic systems.
Potentially they could, they might have to upgrade. So that's, we do a lot of right now, we're demo a house, they build a new house. We do require them to work with an installer to make sure that it's gonna be sufficient for their new
Yeah.
house and stuff like that. So we can.
Because
work
what I'm
those things,
thinking
yeah.
of is that's a huge expense.
Sure.
To
Yep.
do that, so if we could allow them to hook up
Septic-
and,
Yeah, septic requirements are based on the square foot of the house.
yeah,
So if they have two houses, that's that square footage, or septic doesn't meet that.
then they got up
You have to put
yeah.
another one.
And our existing, I assume, manufactured home restrictions that we have would still maintain in place.
Yeah, so you'd have to get a conditional use permit if they wanted to place
Want
that
to
there.
want
Right.
to put a double wide on, yeah.
No.
Yep,
So then, like in that scenario, it would actually technically be two conditional use permits then.
correct.
Yep.
Yep.
I like them, Toby, good conversation,
Yeah,
good
I think
topics.
that'd be good and
I
it'd be
think it would
helpful.
clean up a lot of stuff, however they end up. I think it, really good moves.
So, appreciate the time tonight, talk about it, we'll get something drafted up next month and kind of show you what the draft would look like. And again, a work session with that next month, and then if, with your blessing, we take it to the Board of Commissioners for their,
So next month, there wouldn't be public comment on it?
no, it's still a work session, yeah, to
It's- yeah.
get through it, yeah.
And then we'd push it up to the commission. If it came back, I'm assuming it will, then that's when we'd have advertised for public comment on each one.
Yeah,
Do you envision, would we take them all up the same night or?
Yeah.
kind of- Yeah.
yeah. Separate ordinances, we take them up the same night, but in talking just through this dialogue, it wouldn't hurt to just have a listening session with the public too at our level.
Before we,
Yeah, before we send it up to the board.
Oh.
Just kind of get some feeling from the public as well too, yeah.
could you advertise it that way
Yeah.
next month?
Well, we wouldn't like as a public hearing, but we
No.
would just put it as, public comment allowed on that portion of it, yeah. Probably wait till the next month after we, go through it next month, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Better to do it right than to do it fast. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
so it takes time to kind of make sure that we get everything put in place, so.
Yep.
Okay.
We know about that.
I know.
Sometimes it takes us 2 years, but we get it through.
Mr. Chair, can I ask another question?
Yes, please.
Can I go back to the solar discussion? Did I hear that right, that you're trying to write that ordinance so that at a specific acreage, they don't have to come to planning and zoning if they meet certain requirements? So like leaving, did I understand that you wanted to leave out, or that would leave out public input? And I think at this point, that would not be taken as a transparent process to the public. So I just wanted to revisit, did I hear that correctly, that you want to try to rewrite that so that they don't have to go through the process like last month?
So what proposes, in the zoning ordinance, you have permissive uses which are by right. There's really no standards associated with them. They just come in and get a building permit from staff. And then there's permitted special uses, which are these. So that's how we do wind energy conversion systems. We do those as permitted special use, or permitted special uses. So what it would do would create a threshold. So if the threshold is there of 80 acres, whatever standards are there, if they meet those, then they do get a building permit without a public hearing. If they don't meet those standards, then it would flip to a conditional use permit public hearing. So you essentially want to create a threshold to say in the county, if you're this amount, as long as you meet the standards, we're not going to require a public hearing for it. So like with CAFOs, we do that with class Ds, essentially. So there's a certain threshold you say that's, and I'm not saying that that's what the public wants, but I'm not saying that what the board wants. I'm just saying that typically with these types of land uses, you do create a threshold for what it is that you want for approval of it.
What you're saying is that's a suggested starting.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
and just to piggyback on Commissioner Otten's comments, currently, we don't have anything for solar, so we need to start somewhere, right?
It's not a specified land use.
Right. So we need to start somewhere and get the
Yep.
conversation going.
Yep. And really what we're throwing out is based on our experience of looking at it, there is a difference between 80 acres and 1,000 acres of a wind farm, right? Or not a wind farm, but a solar farm. And so really, you need to develop a threshold to say, okay, if it's this size, we're okay with that as long as it meets these standards. If it flips to a conditional use permit, then that's because they don't meet the standards.
And I think that when we get to that point, I think the discussion and the debate will be is what's that minimum threshold size?
10 acres, 20 acres.
What's the 1,000 head hog barn? For solar,
Yeah.
I think that's where the discussion's gonna come. But I'm cool with starting at 80 acres. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it, but I think that'd be a fair place to start because one, we all have reference to that because we just went through it, right? So we know what that kind of looks like to start with anyway.
And you could put additional thresholds in there if it's more than a mile away from a substation. You could put that as a standard in there and it flips it to a conditional use permit. You just typically want to differentiate between what different sizes there are within there.
Yeah, I think as you and I have talked, handling it very similar to the way we do CAFOs with setbacks and a list of standards and, obviously if you're out in the middle somewhere and there's no people around, that maybe looks different than like the one we had where there's residents all over the place.
And we could put a requirement in there that all the neighbors have to be in agreeance with it or something like that. The intention is not to take away the public hearing process.
Right.
It's really just to create a standard set of thresholds of what people can expect,
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to make that all conditional use permit, that's fine too. That works too. But definitely think we put the max on it though. So if you're over state permitting, that should not be allowed in the A1 agricultural district. That would flip to a commercial or industrial district, so.
As we talk about solar, is there a way within our GIS system to see where those electrical substations are?
Yeah.
Are they readily identifiable? If we were to put a standard in there about, location from an electrical substation, do we have something that makes that readily identifiable to see how many we have within the county?
Yeah, we could break that out, yeah. Not to say that we wouldn't build a new substation, but yeah.
Yeah, but at least we get a map of what this looks like from a starting point.
Just for
Because,
context.
and Jerry, maybe you can, or Commissioner Jungling, maybe answer it. I'm assuming, and based on the last one, if I remember right, that's what they said, is that the proximity to a substation is important, correct?
Right, because if, it's just like anything, if it doesn't make financial sense, if you have made too large an investment, then there's no return on your money and you can't do it.
And I'm assuming the farther away from a substation you get, the more expensive it gets to
Correct, yep.
build the infrastructure to get it to the substation, right?
Correct, and then you have transmission lines and you got easements going through fields or whatnot to
Sure.
get there the farther away you are.
So most probably that's where the request would come from is
Correct.
Close proximity to,
Correct, a connection, maybe not necessarily a substation, but some kind of connection point.
okay. What about like these humongous highline wires that run through can they
Those are
hook on?
regional, usually those are regional distribution or regional transmission, or other than distribution.
So is that a thing? Can you hook onto those? Probably not.
There's- Typically, no.
Okay.
No, that's another level up.
So with that, I think that would be a valuable piece of information to have if we're gonna start the discussion, is just like Commissioner Green's asking, is like, cause we're not talking about every square foot of the county to start with. We would just be probably talking about those, however many there is, 5, 10.
It will be hard though, because each transmission is sized, or each substation is sized different. So it's like a car, you can't put big tires on a small car.
Sure.
So maybe most of them aren't even suitable, even though they're there. They're not suitable for taking in 80 acres, 100 acres or whatnot.
So do you guys think that most probably if there was solar expansion or solar in the county that, probably new substations come along with that? To enable it?
Yeah, we can talk through this as, next week as a working session, but my thought is let them bring that to us. I don't think it's our determination to decide what a private company can or can't do. Let them do the work, let them see if the return on investment works for themselves.
I see.
And then we can determine as it goes.
Yep.
Because otherwise, we're talking about, well, here's a solar district, it can
So-
only be here, and I
Yeah.
don't think that's our spot.
So what's
Much
your-
like we said at the meeting, it goes where it needs to go.
Yeah.
But it's our
So-
job to say, is that an appropriate area for it?
Well, I think that's probably the discussion is, it's probably easier to set an ordinance that allows it to go anywhere. And then they decide where it goes versus, I guess the flip side to that is we decide there's these 5 areas within the county they can go, but then that's real limiting probably, yeah. So what you're suggesting is that we have the discussion on just if we write an ordinance that it's cool everywhere, including future,
If they meet certain requirements,
yep,
then it's fine, because they'll determine if that works there or not, and
yep.
if they meet everything, then our rules, and it's fine.
Still be cool to see the map, though,
Well, I think
if you can do it.
we can do anything, but I think to kind of maybe round back to Commissioner Otten's question, I think from a staff perspective, we're gonna throw out kind of where the starting point is. Where the ending point is really where you guys want it to be.
Yep.
Where we see, the issue all the time is that we don't wanna be arbitrary with these decisions. You know, you don't wanna approve one here, but don't approve one here.
I agree.
They should all meet the same standards that you want to have. Not to say that you can't add additional standards based on what the neighbors want or that part of it, but I think that if you look back at the application, I think that was a step in the right direction where we're screening the whole thing. I mean, there's nothing that you can see there, right? I mean, it's completely screened. And so those should definitely be a standard there. And then any other standards that you want, distance of substations, whatever it might be. But staff's throwing out kind of a way that you can dial it back or dial it up, right? You know, if we start out with a conditional use permit, there's no room for you guys to move in either direction, really, with what it is.
The only last comment I'll make is, the last time we tried this with something where we passed some starting points, for discussion, it didn't go real well. Because, you know, and I don't know how to, how do you relay the message that, that this is the starting point, and by next month it isn't out there that, oh my God, the planning commission wants to allow solar farms on every 80 acres without a public comment. And maybe we just do it but, you know, that's not the message. I mean, what you were recommending as a starting point, I don't think is the message that the public needs to get needs to fear that that's gonna get passed next month and you can have solar, you know what I'm saying? It seems like we went through that with the carbon a little bit. We found a starting point and it kinda.
We did have lots of good communication back and forth with industry experts, with the citizens, with the residents, with our own, and, you know, I think it's just a communication thing.
Yep. But I just want to be on record of that, is that if anybody fears that we're coming next month to start plopping down solar farms on every 80 acres, I don't think that's the case.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
That's not how I understand it.
So, I mean, in comparison, if you're looking at the screen right now, I mean, that's the same thing. You know, the predecessors before us said Class D concentrated animal feeding operations don't require a public hearing.
Right.
At some point in time, somebody said there's a threshold here.
Yeah.
There is a difference between 80 acres and 100 acres.
Right.
And it might not be 80, it might be 10, it might be
Yeah.
15 or 20. I don't know what that number is.
I agree
Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's the thing that I hope people understand, is that if that's where we start, but the discussion's gonna be on where's that threshold, and where do we settle on that?
And the same thing on the cap. You know, that'll be a big discussion too, is how many megawatts is too many in the A1 district where it does require it to flip to a commercial or industrial zoning district. But look, these are pressing land uses coming before us. We can't bury our head in the sand that we don't need to take a look at these things.
100%.
And they're tough things, and I don't disagree with you that the public's gonna be both sides of this thing. And ultimately, we're here to listen to what the public wants too. But you don't get off the dime if you don't start talking about what alternatives exist out there. The easy alternative would be to say, well, everything should be a conditional use permit, but that's not really how it's gonna work.
Well, and it doesn't
So-
create consistency.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
That gets to be the hard part. And currently, the position we're in is that we don't have a consistent starting point for people. When they come to your office and say, okay, I want to do this, you're kind of like, I mean, you did the best you could with the last one, and, but that would be, if we handle them all that way, that would be inconsistent in the future. to continue to do it that way.
Yeah.
Hey, Toby, as far as, you know, these pressing land matters, so currently, based on the way it's written, where would, you know, data centers seem to be one of these topics of conversation all over the country at this point. Where would be the appropriate place within our current ordinances to put a data center?
That was going to be my next question as well, so thank you.
So they're not allowed in the A1 agricultural district.
So they're not allowed in ag?
They're not.
Okay.
So it'd have to either be an existing zoned commercial or I1 or I2 parcel, or it'd have to be rezoned to a commercial I1 or I2 parcel.
It's not allowed because,
We don't allow warehousing in the A1 agricultural district. Yeah.
Do you foresee that potentially being an issue?
Data centers or the land use part of it?
Not having enough land use for them if they want.
No.
You don't think we're restricted there by leaving it? Okay.
No.
the only thing, I don't know if you've talked to the commission about this or not, or, you know, obviously we have the commission representative, Commissioner Otten here. Is there anything specifically that the commission would like us to look at that we know of? Would be probably a question. You know, I know oftentimes we start to work on these, we send them up, they get remanded back. I just didn't know if Commissioner Otten, if you know, or if there've been any conversations about priorities that you guys would have for us to look at regarding the ordinances, or.
I know that the data centers have come up, but it's not been inside the commission. It's been at other meetings that I've attended, like, we had one a couple weeks ago, put on by the electrical companies, the co-ops, and they did a lot of information on the data centers. And then my husband went to Washington DC by invitation, and a lot of that was on data centers and AI. And so it's out there, we know it's coming, but there has been no specific that I know of talking about inside the commission for data centers. But I know it's coming.
Yeah.
But as Commissioner Green said, outside of data, I don't watch all the commission meetings like I maybe should, but are there issues that is there any confusion at the county commission level about some of the decisions we're making that we should address, do you think?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
So, Mr. Brown, going back to where we started here with the 4 amendments we're talking through. So next meeting, we're just doing a working session. We'll recommend something, send it the next month to the board or the commissioners. Or,
I think next month we'll do a work session of the drafts. The following month, we'll do a listening session with the public. And then we'll send it up to the board for, they have to remand it back to us. They may or may not do that. And again, you know, if you want to change some of these thoughts that we have on the solar and stuff like that, we can do that now. But I want to make it clear that the draft that we're going to make is not a, you know, that's a discussion document. That's nowhere where we're going to end up, you know, with where we're at with it. It's just we need a starting point somewhere about what it is, so.
my only suggestion is when we get our drafting, obviously none of us here are experts on solars. So whether we start talking through the size of megawatts or transmissions or land use, we should have some experts actually that
Absolutely.
can give us some real facts. And I don't want to make up facts just from hearsay or what we do, because we see that too much in our social media now, where there's false facts or made up facts or things that just kind of sound nice.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea about electricity. Especially at that level, you know, no, I think that'd be a great idea.
Well, I think it's
I mean,
Yeah,
you're
I mean-
obviously in contact with
Yep.
some people
Yep.
that you would have somebody that could come give us a,
Well, even the
Briefer.
co-ops have had experts out there too.
So I think it's important though, and even the data centers, which is going to be a thing we're going to have to talk about down the road.
Yeah.
It's important that we look at it from a land use perspective. You know, we don't want to get caught in the weeds because, especially with the data centers, that stuff changes all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it used to be the issue was the water consumption. Now they're using glycols, so a lot of it's, you know, they're doing air cool, they're doing regeneration. So I mean, everybody's different in that aspect. Just like solar, everybody's a little bit different in it. We're looking at it from a land use perspective. Is it what do we think is appropriate if you're going to put that land use on this property? Much like we do with accessory buildings, we do with car sales, or we do with oversized warehousing. You know, if we keep it simple on that part of it to just look at it from a land use perspective.
Yeah.
And then still give yourselves the ability through the public hearing process to answer these questions directly to the applicants, to the neighbors and things like that. It's when we get, you know, pigeon-toed into doing something that we're over-regulating it and we don't know what it is that we're regulating.
Yeah.
That gets us into problems down the road. And I'll say, it's a disadvantage for the public too. Because they won't be able to communicate with us if we put so much restriction on it.
Yeah.
That's to the negative part of it too, so.
Well, that brings up a good point because, no, at least I'm not a used car salesman expert. I'm not an accessory building expert. Most of you probably aren't animal agriculture experts, but those are all things we don't look at. The business side of it, more so to your point, the land use side, and yeah, if we stay focused on that, then it's.
Yeah, we want to make sure Lincoln County.
I don't necessarily need to understand megawatts and gigawatts and all this electrical stuff to understand if, the land use side of 80 acres of solar panels. However much power that puts out, that shouldn't affect our decision necessarily, is that kind of what you're saying? And I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for example, the solar's a little bit different, but for the data centers, you know, a lot of stuff going on inside, but from us, it's a big building.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's really what it is, it's a big building.
And it's changing awful fast. I mean, if we put a whole bunch of regulations on it, it'll look a lot different 6 months down the road, most probably.
Well, I think the other part that I'd bring up about the data centers is to be realistic too, is that it's gonna be a challenge for them to be located in the agricultural area, or the rural area. Because above anything, the water, all the other stuff, is they're gonna need fire suppression within those buildings.
Yeah.
And if you've told me, if you've heard this maybe before, is we don't have fire suppression out in the rural area.
Right.
So it's gonna be a challenge. Mostly those are gonna be located within or adjacent to a municipality.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I don't think they're gonna be all over the place in the county, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
all right, we'll see you next month on those drafts then. Okay, Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Great year in Lincoln County. With that, I ask a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn, Scott.
Second, Green?
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Against? Thank you, we're adjourned.